Welcome to Color Me Happy podcast. My name is Brandi Hofer. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate your time. We are here in studio today with Ekaterina Popova, or Kat for short. It's hard for me to list all her accolades because there are so many. She's quite an amazing young female art entrepreneur, and she, I know her best in her community called the Art Queens. It's a really supportive female community for creatives, and it started, I think, maybe 2020. Anyway, I've met so many great friends, and Kat is so lovely to have joined us here, and we get super dorky about a few things, and this episode is just filled with so much advice, and it was just so much fun. So I appreciate everyone's support, and the support from the Queens and the support from these ladies who all work together to run things like Create Magazine and and their podcast, the Create podcast. And anyway, I won't get into it again because it's just, there's so many things. Kat just had a show in Paris, so it's just they have a great book. Okay, I'll stop, but you'll learn more about her once you check her out and listen to our chat. Enjoy.
Have to cook. Sorry, we'll start because I feel like we could talk forever. I'm just gonna do an intro, like a recorded one, because I'm so fucking terrible at them that like I've stopped altogether trying.
Totally.
Like I get them when I make them and I read them, but if I try to do it in person, I just get too nervous about reading it.
You're doing amazing. Yeah, do whatever feels good for you. I'm just here and I'll tell you whatever you want to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like well, my friend Sean told me he started this huge Canadian podcast and it's mostly hockey, and he just interviewed like John Cherry. Like, he's done really well, but he's like, you can just only be yourself. You can't try to be anyone else. If you're not good at something, you're not good at it, and just go with it. Like, yeah, that's true.
I honestly, this is like, it's like that with everything. It's like we have this idea that we think we need to do things based on what we've seen or heard other people doing. And then when it feels like so strenuous and so against the way we naturally are, it's so liberating to be like, well, I'm going to do my podcast this way. Like, I keep mine so simple. And so like, basically it's just, it makes it more fun. So you're doing amazing. Yeah, don't
like
overthink it.
Organic, and I feel like people can connect, and we miss those, just, you know, when you run into someone and that excitement of chatting with them and catching up quickly. Like, I feel like that is like the spark in a conversation, instead of like, okay, and I see you went to school in 2006 here. What school is that? Like, it's just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna listen to something else now. I don't want to be mean, but like, it's how typically like a lot of art podcasts began, and you know, everyone's story is important, but we're all missing each other and just having normal conversations. That I think a podcast in a normal conversation is super, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I was just thinking that too. Like, there are some podcasts that are super like polished that I love, but it's more like cinematic. You know, they have like a team of 40 people making like the music transitions and like snippets of conversations. Like, that's like a whole other art.
Yes. No, exactly. We were just, I got an assistant this year, and this is partly with like being with the Queens and like learning about delegation and stuff like that. I was like, I need some help or I'm not going to grow. So Jenny, my assistant, and I were sitting here one day, and she's like, we should have a podcast. I was like, we should have a podcast.
I'm really proud of you.
I'd be so terrible at it. She's like, probably. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, we'll put that on the back burner. And then 3 days later, my videographer, Kim, he messaged me. He's like, Brandi, we should definitely have an art podcast. I'll edit it for you. I was like, okay, awesome. Universe, thank you.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that you have an editor, because that was like the only part that I hated.
Yeah, it's so super, like, do you hate sitting on the computer too? Do you hate that part?
Yeah, like any detailed work, it doesn't even have to be on the computer. Like anything like tedious, I'm like, no, nah. Like editing, anything, documents, no.
I hear you.
I'm like a big idea person, not the edits.
Oh my gosh, we're so similar. I'm like hard pass. Actually.
Yeah. So don't worry, you don't have to do it. People are there for your ideas and your thoughts, not for the edits.
Soon, I hope we can like grow into that, right?
For sure.
But speaking of that, so you have grown such an amazing like umbrella of, you know, and it's all women, right? Too?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many people do you have on your team?
Oh, for my is this, by the way, is this recorded, or is this just us chatting?
This is all recorded already. Is that okay to say?
I just wanted to know if I'm putting on my podcasting voice, which isn't that different from.
Oh no, keep your voice. I like your voice.
Okay, once again,
I yell. So.
All right. I got it. So thank you so much. Yes, I've grown. It is all women on my team, and I think it's honestly like what we're just talking about, like the fact that I hate doing certain things and I'm not good at them, but I have all these ideas and I want to see them in the world, and just humbling myself, and also trusting myself to be able to come up with the resources to pay people too. It's been like a big growth thing for me for the past few years. So I have Alicia, who helps with writing, and she contributes to the podcast as well. We started the gallery together, but that's her baby now. Like, she's doing an amazing job with that. I have Christina, who's helping edit the magazine and write. And I have Sarah. So I probably have like altogether around 10 people helping with between Art Queens and the magazine and podcast. And none of them are full-time. They're all independent, you know, kind of freelancers that help out, which to me right now, I think it works for all of us, because they can still pursue their big passion projects and their artwork and their businesses, but they can also get paid for their expertise.
Yeah, for sure.
That I'm not good at. So it's been really cool. Definitely intimidating. I think hiring someone was one of the biggest hurdles for me. Like, oh my God, here I go. Like, what if I have to let them go immediately?
Yeah. I know, you're like, so I have not any money really, but I'd love for you to be on my team.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it really started. Well, the first time I hired my assistant, Sarah, God bless that girl, she's amazing. She was still in college. She was in my alma mater, Kutztown University, and someone recommended her. And I paid her by like sending her to New York, and just saying like, here's a bunch of free art fair passes, and can you just like do an Instagram takeover, because there was no way I could go to all those fairs all the time. And so she did an amazing job, and she ended up like staying over at a friend's house in Brooklyn, and then she ended up helping with online stuff, and now she helps online. I'm so grateful for her. But yeah, I couldn't pay her at the beginning, but she just was very inspired and ambitious and willing to do that stuff. So thank God. Yeah. And now I can pay her.
And it's like, you kind of like, you needed it. You needed one another, and it grew into something probably better than you ever even imagined, right?
Yeah, for sure. It really taught me so much. And, you know, and I'm probably taught sometimes even it teaches the other person like what they do or not want to do. You know what I mean? In terms of their own art career. So yeah, it's been really cool. And eventually I do hope, you know, once I'm a little more stable, even though I'm doing really well, I think in terms of business, like I would love to see the same numbers for a few years before I commit to some full-time people. Mm-hmm. But it would be really great to have like people with the same vision who want to stay on this journey for a while. I think that would be like the next level.
Yeah, I mean, like a full year income, when you think about that is such a huge thing. And of course you want that, and you want to support people and pay them what they deserve, but like $100,000 is like $100,000.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and just not to commit to it and then have to shut the whole thing down completely, you know? And I think most people who decide to help out small businesses and artists understand that. So I think most people are not in it for the money, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's like an energy exchange almost. Like you're really just like so excited, and you both believe, or you all believe, that this could grow into something meaningful and beyond all expectation.
For sure. Yeah, there is no way that especially art queens could have grown this much without support, you know, because for me with art queens, for example, what was really important is to acknowledge everyone as much as possible. I didn't want it to be another like random void. I wanted it to really be a community. So, but that obviously takes energy and time for someone to commit to like reading every comment, replying to everything, or not everything, or at least as much as possible, right? So that has been really helpful, I think, to also then create members who are equally generous to each other. And I think, you know, you and a ton of other art queens that were there from the beginning, just you all support each other, and it's so beautiful. I can never take credit for it. But initially, I think it does take a little encouragement and resources to like to show people like this is how we want to be in this space.
Well, of course. I mean, you set the bar for, I would say, yeah, so people who don't know, but I'll say in the beginning, but people who don't know, you started the Art Queens and with your team, and you had the idea, but I think what sets it apart is the abundance mindset, and that everyone can share their wins, their losses, and everything, and not be afraid to be like, oh, we don't allow that here, we don't allow self-promotion or whatever, right? Like everyone gets to be like, look what I'm doing, or here's a way to support me. And people do. Like, I've never been a part of something like that. And I've been doing it for 15, like I've been painting for, this makes me feel kind of old, but like 20 years now.
Awesome.
And it's crazy to think about, but like professionally, like almost 15 years. And it feels so good, and it has allowed so much to happen, and it gives you like someone to base what you want to do off of, you know, someone else who is doing something, you're like, oh, I get it, okay, well, I want to try to do that too. And then the people who see you, they're like, oh, how did you do that? And they ask you, and it's just like a whole full of levels of people. I'm so bad at explaining things, but so many levels of people supporting one another in so many ways. And it wasn't there before, especially for females.
Well,
right?
Thank you for being a beautiful part of it. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the reason, and this is why I think like no matter what happens to us, it could always be used for good. The reason why Art Queens has this strong mission of abundance and support is because I went through something so painful, literally just a few months before I launched. Alicia and I were creating these workshops, and we just finished writing a book. And this person, unfortunately, a woman, came after us with such, you know, just bullying and accusing us of things and basically telling us that we can't be that we can't be and we can't do what we're doing. And so what we were doing before was working great, and it caused me especially to pivot because I never wanted to get attacked on that level, and I never wanted anyone to experience that. So I knew what I didn't want. But on the flip side, I also did have role models that were doing it right, that I'm like, I don't want to be like that bully. I want to be like this, like confident, calm, supportive person. So yeah, it's what wasn't there before, but also the contrast of like how bad it could be that inspired me to like create a little safety in our corner.
So as terrible as that was, like you're probably very grateful for it because you're like, wow, we need this. Like I need this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of, you know, anyone who wants to start a business or even just a side project. I think that's how we eliminate competition too. If it wasn't for that woman, I probably would continue on with the generic, like, you know, artist business class, like just not thinking to my own personal experiences, but having that threat, having someone tell you that, you know, in our case, she accused us of taking content from her, which we didn't, but I take responsibility for the fact that I didn't differentiate myself enough. And when I started owning my own quirks, like I love fairy tales, I love like all these, you know, feminine things. And I really started owning that part of myself. Then it was a lot harder for someone to come in and say, like, you took it from me. Like, no, there's a bunch of weird stuff here. Like, there's no way that you have a combination of obsession with Pomeranians and crowns and like, there's just no way. So, you know, part of standing out and not worrying about competition is really owning who we are, and even the weird things. It could be our biggest strength too.
Yeah. And if it doesn't feel good, you're probably on the wrong path anyway, right?
Good point. Yes. If it feels like it's too much work and too much friction and you're fighting everyone around you, probably the universe is screaming at you to like, just take a pause and see what, see what can be changed.
Yeah. And I think it was maybe on your podcast, you guys had Austin Kleon on.
Yeah, we had him twice. I did him once. Oh, no.
Yeah.
I interviewed him once and Alicia interviewed him the second time.
Yeah, so good. I love his little quotes and stuff.
I love his books.
I know. He said, I don't, something like this. Don't quote me. But like, he never really wrote the books that he thought people needed. He wrote the books that he needed, and that's why they worked. It's something he needed to read, and for him to like, I think it's almost like his books are a reflection on like what is working in his life, right? And I think that's what is so successful about the Queen specifically is you needed it, and turns out so many other people did too. Right?
Yeah, I think we're communally and energetically, we're all connected, especially last year. I mean, there was no, like, that tragedy of what was happening in the world united so many of us and stripped away all our differences so freaking fast that the fundamental need for connection and support was like really what we, you know, needed at the time. So I totally am with you. And I also, you know, there's a lot of business and whatever psychological advice out there, like, you know, survey your audience, see what they need. And that is true. I think listening is a big part of building anything. But at the end of the day, I think listening to ourselves is equally important, right? Like not treating ourselves as just like this amoeba that molds and adapts to whatever's going on around, but like honoring our own needs first and then attracting the people that are similar. That's been the most fulfilling way to approach it for me.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, and we can feel it for sure.
I'm glad. Not to say that it doesn't have its challenges, but I think it has been the most, like, hands down, the most, I don't want to say it was accidental. I definitely wanted to do something like that. I had no idea what it would look like, but it's the best thing for me. And I love it. I love you all. Yeah, I love you all so much. It's scary.
Everyone loves you so much too. And I love you and your space and the messaging behind it all. What else? Okay, so I know what I want to say. It'll come out eventually. But so you also had some really big shifts, I would say, like specifically with you made some really big goals, and you set out to make some changes, and like what prompted that?
Specifically which changes in my personal life or in my business life?
I would say when you monetary goals. Mm-hmm. You have always mentioned like reading self-help books, and then you set like, I remember you posted a little note, like a bath. Yeah, it is hard to remember all the things you say and do. Sorry.
I don't expect you to remember.
Note that you had found, and it was like a money-making goal, and you had, I think it was like, yes, you're a badass at making money or something, and then you shifted.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. That was really special to see because I didn't know. I had those stickers all over the house at one point, and I took them down, and because they started like, you know, when the sticker gets old, like you can't get it off anymore. So I had to like get goo off. And so anyway, when I first left my day job, unfortunately, it was a very crazy time because it was around the same time I lost my first business. So not only did I just become financially unstable, I also got rid of like the only solid income stream that I had. And it was really scary. And I also invested a ton of money into my first coach. At the time, to me, that was a mind-blowing amount. It wasn't even that much, but just not having that security. So one of the first things I've done with my coach, and through listening to things like Jen Sincero, You're a Badass at Making Money, listening to like everything from Tony Robbins to Mel Robbins to like anything I could get my hands on, ears on, I started to write these affirmations. And one of them was from Bob Proctor, who I think his book is called You're Born Rich or something. Anyway, he said the affirmation is, I'm so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities from multiple sources on a continuous basis. And then you have to write the amount that you hope to make or want to make. So I wrote that amount. So thank you that I'm making, at the time it was 125,000. And that was a huge amount at the time. Like, let me tell you, I was not near that. So it was like really stretching me. But I got used to it. I looked at it every day, months went by and I was looking at it. While being in debt, losing my business, I had to like use credit cards. So I was quite a bit in debt and not feeling very good about my financial situation. But I would say it was like 2-3 years later, it started to happen. And I remember just starting to see the numbers coming in and feeling like, okay, like it's not there yet, but like I'm seeing the progress. Like it's definitely better than it was.
Not going down, right?
What?
It wasn't going down.
Yeah, it wasn't going down. And in all fairness, sometimes it was like dip, it's not like this perfect steady little journey. It's like but it worked. And then this year when I posted that, I was like, oh my God, I literally just like, now I think it was like almost triple that amount. And it was shocking to me because I didn't even notice it at that point. I didn't even have a specific financial goal like that. But it is really important to have goals, even if you don't think you're reaching them. Your subconscious mind will work on it because our brain loves to answer questions and to fulfill those gaps that we create for it. So even when you don't think things are happening, you'll get ideas for how to make it happen, even when you're not actively like pursuing it. So yeah, last year in the pandemic, like totally surpassed it. And I was really like, oh my God, thank you, old self, for listening to all that stuff and for doing it. So I definitely encourage everyone to write that number or anything. It doesn't have to be a number. It could be a house, it could be a studio, it could be something, that you really want to see in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it doesn't even have to be something you can buy with money. It can just be like, I don't want to be with this partner anymore because they are
yes.
Or whatever, like it can be any sort of goal. And there's such strength in writing or saying something aloud, right? So there's so many things in what you just said that I want to touch on, but no, the first where you began was coaching and like mentorship. There is such value in that. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm. As a coach or as a client?
Both.
Or both.
I think there's something to gain from every conversation.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
Right?
I think the safety, like, my boyfriend, when I hired my first coach, he was like, why do you need that? I can tell you all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't come through in the same way from your partner because there's history, there's all these triggers, and there's something magical that happens when you're in a neutral relationship with a coach because you get to just express your desires, your biggest fears in a place they care about you, but not in the same way as your partner does, right? They don't care. They don't have a past moment with you where there could have been an argument or something. So it was so powerful. Just giving that space to others as a coach and receiving it. I still work with coaches to this day for different areas. It could be fitness, it could be, my creativity. And it just helps me feel seen, especially if you start serving others, you do need to have support yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they can see something that you're kind of missing,
Yeah, absolutely. They can start noticing or just asking you the right question. Even this morning, I met with this spiritual guide that I meet with once or twice a month, and she just asked me a question that literally made me cancel an event that I had. And it was just like, oh my God, that was a self-sabotaging behavior. Just taking time to reflect on what you're doing is so powerful.
Yeah. No, there are so many benefits. Like it's hard to even list them all. But even I had my first last year, because we were part of, like, was it 2 years ago, the Canadian one, Thrive?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was in Thrive, and a lot of them recommended Penny Lane. Shen, who is with Days and Confucius, and I was like, I need something. So I ended up having my a first few meetings with her, because you can't just do one.
No.
There's so much information, right? They can really just, and she's fast. She's like, dude, you need to change that. Like, she's seriously to the point, which is great. But it's something that you're not seeing. So she's like, stop. We don't know what's happening right now, because it was a year ago. We don't know what's happening right now. You're putting so much energy into applying for galleries. You're in 2 galleries. I don't know why you need more. Stop it. I don't know what to do, right? She's like, stop, set up your shop, do this and this and this. I tripled my income from having a coach. Like, my income wasn't very big, so it's very easy to triple.
It's still amazing.
But to see that much of a shift just from some advice, but it's useful advice. It's something you weren't seeing, and when you're stuck in a destructive pattern, or a pattern that's not working, it's life-changing, it's life-altering, and it just gets you going, right? It gets you excited, and you're like, it's like you're back in school with a teacher, and they're like, you need to do this, and you're like, you're right, I do.
I know. Don't you miss that? Like, sometimes when you're stuck, I really miss the part of college where people would bring me an artist to reference, or to, hey, check this artist out that's working with this subject matter, or hey, what if you tried this color? Oh gosh, I miss those little tips.
Get you on something else, right? And get your gears going, especially creatively. But for me it's always been business. I've always kind of ignored that, and I think I got the painting part down.
Yes, I think you did too. You're amazing.
Every night I'm just for 6 hours just painting and drawing. I'm I think I figured that out. I got so much artwork now.
That's awesome.
Years worth of artwork.
That's the most important thing.
It's because I didn't care about money. It came to me, but it came to me in the amount that I needed to buy groceries and pay for bills, right? Which is great too. And I made what I needed. But now I'm okay, I'm working my ass off, and I'm burning out. What we did with my coach worked, but to the point where I didn't notice I had burnt out. I made over 100 original pieces.
Oh my God.
Custom artworks this year. I wish someone had been hello, can you just stop for a second? What are you doing? And I literally had told 3 other artists in my mastermind groups that
you were subconsciously talking to yourself
so much, but I was doing it anyway. Yeah, so
it totally makes sense.
Big shift in gears, but that's the value in support and talking it out, all those things out with those people in your life. And we don't have we can't have really studio friends anymore. Not that in Loyman, where I live, I can't. There's 4 artists.
I have never, even since I moved to the studio, I have my studio neighbor Phyllis, and I still see her now, but I love kind of having my space to myself. And I think it comes from not having a space for a long time. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with planning something cool with our community eventually. But yeah, I think just having those focused conversations. And I just want to circle back to something you said about business. It's not that you don't cared, you haven't cared about money or business. I think it's there are different seasons. And I think it's okay to if you're truly inspired and you want to focus on art making, then ride that wave, because there's a time where we're tired and we're okay, time out. And maybe then that's the time to sell and to market and to get creative with that. To me, the biggest learning has been that it has to be a choice. I never want to feel like, oh, well, I can never make that money. Like now I fully know that I can. And if I choose not to hustle, if I choose to just be chill for a while, that's really empowering to me too. You know, it's not all about the money and the six figures. I think it's like knowing that you can if you want to, if you like knowing that there's nothing stopping you, but like what would really make you fulfilled and joyful at this time of your life. And sometimes it is money and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. No, and you're right with like the seasons. Like I also had 3 children.
Oh yeah, that part.
So in that time, like creating did fit, right? But being on the computer and the marketing aspect and all of that stuff, that didn't really fit because I needed time to myself, and I needed that creation and that connection to that while I was pregnant with Theo. I started this one and it took me forever because I actually just wanted to garden. And that's what I did.
It's amazing. It's
I
so
just
beautiful.
was like, I need to re-landscape my yard and garden. I got like 30 tomatoes out of it. So
that's awesome.
All hard work. But you do have to listen to your side, and everyone's at a different place and you have to like respect that. But I want to go back to what you said too, but with what you did and what you've created, it did have to take a certain amount of like discipline for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and commitment, you know, I think it's scary to launch something and then, especially with a membership, because that implies that it's going to keep going on. So in the beginning, I think I definitely have my doubts, like, where is this going? Oh my gosh, what if everyone leaves? Questions every week. I would have a new question like, oh, am I doing too much? Am I doing not enough? Like, did I say something wrong? It's just never stops. So you have to just like be completely honest and have these check-in moments, you know, in the beginning where you said you're having a meeting with yourself. Like you almost do have to have a meeting. It doesn't have to be Zoom. I would go on walks every morning and just be like, is this still what I want to do? And every week so far, and till this day, the answer is yes. Like I love the art queens. Even if I decide to like shift or polish or improve the way things are, I love the essence of it. And, you know, it can grow with me as I learn new skills, as I, you know, get new knowledge of how to run a membership. But it definitely took discipline and courage because, yeah, committing to a membership was the scariest part. Scarier than a course, scarier to than a one-on-one client, because that is going to pass. You know, you're going to go through that session and be done with that. But with the membership, that was probably the scariest, but also the most rewarding. And, you know, from that membership, I would like, I can't even explain how many new friends, how many new clients, like just, it gave me so much. But it takes discipline now in a sense, like every month I have to sit down and look at the next 2 months. Like what are the 2 sessions? You know, what are the topics? What's happening? And every week it is a commitment to check in and plan things, but it's totally worth it. And it feels very intuitive. In the beginning, it was a lot of brain power, like, how does this work? But now it's more like just minor details and just going with the flow.
Yeah. A lot to set up and get going initially. And you probably were exhausted.
Yeah, I was kind of like on this high. It was like an adrenaline high from also I was going through a very healing time, like with my own sobriety. So it was almost good that I had this big project to distract me. And it's not, you know, I didn't have a physical addiction, but it was just part of my routine. I was going out with people all the time. So just kind of replacing that habit with another more positive habit was helpful. So yeah. I am grateful that it happened at that time. I don't know if I could do it again anytime soon. That was a massive launch for sure.
So along with like discipline, and I like discipline is always like a really harsh word, but it's not. It's about sticking to healthy habits and routine. And I love that you even said on your walk, like you took time to reflect on your walk. Like you think about, it's not like you're thinking about work, but you're coming up with those exciting ideas and you're seeing what works for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also dealing with my triggers. So, you know, anytime anything would come up, there were hard conversations last year that I had to have. There was, you know, parts of education that I had to, go into, which totally I'm grateful for, but it was hard. There were some conversations that were not kind, from people who are not coming from a good place, and just learning to navigate that. Really, it was important to give myself space to talk to myself and let myself know that I'm not responsible for other people, because you do feel that way when you start, it's your baby, and it gets really hard, but it's interesting too. I think the biggest lesson with anything is just neutralizing it. Neutralizing it doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about the other person. You know, it's an interaction or an experience, and it's just information, it's feedback. So,
Can we talk about your sobriety?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a year. I mean, it's going to be a year in like a few weeks.
That's so great. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
It's just like, it's a hard thing to talk about. Even for me personally, in 2012, I also quit.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So like from time to time, I have like a nice wine if we're having a nice fancy dinner. I don't call that like,
yeah,
it's not like I'm having the bottle. Like I would have a bottle every Friday night. Like but there were destructive things happening in my life that were causing me to mask something else, right? So yeah, congratulations. I'm so proud of you, because it really is such a freeing experience. Like you can actually literally see the weight coming off. You're like, not just like emotional, but like physical weight coming up. Like my face, I remember like the first month, like my face just like was so puffy, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think like I looked at pictures of myself too. Like it was, even though I was the same weight, like it definitely, like your face gets so puffy from drinking. It's interesting. I never noticed. I mean, I didn't know, because that was just that was just what I look like. And so, yeah. And I'm with you. Since I quit, I did have one glass of wine, but my rule was to not feel anything. So I had a glass of wine on Valentine's Day with a very safe group of people, and they, I asked them like, don't let me have more than this. And I drank it over 4 hours. So I literally felt nothing, but
it's like a treat. It's not like you were looking to feel a certain way. It was like a treat with food. Like,
yes. And I wanted it to be an experience versus a habit, because it was a habit for me. Like I would go to, like the first thing I would do when I sat down at a restaurant or even go to an art fair was grab a drink. And it's like I was missing on all the other stuff that was there. I just didn't want that life anymore. But it is such a healing thing, and I'm really proud of you for doing this too. I know how it's still hard sometimes, like when I'm really stressed or really tired, like, oh my gosh, I could totally go for a drink, and just you think you're just cutting like corners, right? You're just gonna like shut it all out, but that's not how it works.
No.
So
all you have to do is think about the next day. How you'll feel. That'll pretty much deter you from anything.
I literally get nauseous when I think of hangovers, because I haven't had one in a year. So like when I think of like how I used to feel, I'm like, oh my God, how the hell did I could never do this. I could never have this membership. I could never coach people if I was still drinking. I'd be too tired. I would have no energy to give.
It's such, it's like, and it totally goes into what you're putting in your body. Your body's going to like give back to you, and when there's ways to feel high, and there's natural ways to feel high, like with endorphins and moving. And it's such an important thing that I think is so missed. And drinking is such a culture, like an accepted culture in our society. And I wish it would be acknowledged a bit more how destructive it can be.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't grow up, like people in Russia drink a lot, but no one in my family except for my grandfather really drank much on a day-to-day basis. We just never had these conversations about like, what is acceptable, what's not. So I kind of made my own rules, but those rules kept like stretching and allowing me to drink more and more often. And it's some, the grace that I have for myself for some of the periods in my life where I was drinking heavily. I was doing the best I could without therapy, without support. And so in a way, I am grateful that got me through, but I no longer need that. So thank God that I'm here and fully present.
I think it is something you have to learn and just like feel out. And and you're like, okay, that's not for me. And some people can. I mean, some people are okay with it, but yeah, definitely not for me.
No,
I think about spending the next day with my kids, and like,
oh my God, that is the other thing.
I get physically ill. Like I get physically ill and I can't move. So for me, it's like very.
Now hashtag not worth it.
Not worth it in any regard, but that's okay. Also, did you go vegan or vegetarian or?
I am mostly plant-based. I still have meat, like especially on days, when it's that time of the month, or on days that I run like over 7 miles, then I feel like I need some meat, and I just listen to my body. I'm not really strict with it, but I do feel better. I feel like clear-minded. And it's funny because I think I shared this on, I don't know if you were there on the Art Queens, but I actually started eating more carbs because for a long time, I mean, I had a lot of carbs through alcohol, but I didn't actually consume healthy carbs. So that's been a really interesting change, and I feel much better. Like I don't crash as much. So it's funny, and like everyone's like keto, and I was for a long time too. I was on keto, and then I was doing like mostly protein and lean veggies, and now I'm like, oh wow, now I can eat pasta again. Life is amazing.
No.
Life is good. I can't live without it anymore.
I feel like when it comes to that, you have to go with what you can consistently stick with.
Yes.
Right? And what is realistic. If you're looking to like, I guess, really turn around your life, and like if you're drinking like pop, say, yes, you should probably cut out like pop, and if you're like hammering some bags of chips, yes. But as far as say you like chocolate, you can just like have some dark chocolate, and then but also have some other things along with it, or have a little bit after supper as like a treat, if you can like balance. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's
maintainable.
It sounds so simple, but this culture thrives on like extremes. The one thing that is ruining your life, find out the worst ingredient ever. Like that's killing.
Can really ruin your life.
Coffee will make you die.
Yeah.
Like it's just silly. But yeah, I'm learning that thing where you just like don't overdo it, and it's great.
I make these. I'm getting super food dorky now, but I make these. I love chocolate chip cookies. But I actually don't love like the normal ones because they make me feel gross. But so I went to a nutritionist or a dietitian, I think it was a nutritionist. It was because I have a gluten intolerance, which is terrible and it sucks. And it took a long time to realize. But thank goodness I did. But I make these cookies with like hemp hearts and chia and oats. And she said, throw in a can of black beans. And I was like, ew, no. I'm not making my cookies with black beans. No. Like, could you imagine just eating a cookie and getting some beans? I was like, no. She's like, but you need to eat more protein, because at the time I was veggie. I was like, ugh. So I ended up doing it. And so you just blend it in at the beginning with like the butter and the like other things, and you don't even notice, and it's like stacked full of protein, but like they're super caloric, like insanely. But I get my chocolate chip cookie, or like 5, and
your protein.
Like, you sent me home with that bag, and I ate it in the car. They're so,
oh my God.
You get your cookie, and they're so good. And I even put zucchini in now, and my son saw me putting in zucchini. He's like, oh, what are you doing?
Like, what's mom lost it? Beans, zucchini, broccoli, kale.
Every batch of your cookies that you eat, I make like 65, and I put them in the freezer. I wish they lasted longer, but they don't.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But it makes total sense. Like in the Vietnamese restaurant, they have like bread bean desserts that I always find. I mean, they taste good, but I just can never get over the way they look.
No.
It's so weird.
But you don't even notice. They look like a normal cookie. And I'm like, okay, now I don't feel bad. And the protein and sugar.
I love it. Nutritious, sneaky mom trick. What else can you put in the... What else can you squeeze in?
I've tried several things, and like spinach, no. Swiss chard.
Oh man, maybe you could like blend it or something.
You have a garden, you always end up with too much Swiss chard at the end of the season. So it like had strings in it. I was like, can't do that.
Oh my gosh, I'm guessing those weren't the popular batch.
You know what? No one even noticed. We tried to prank my husband and we put we did chocolate covered like cashews and chocolate covered Brussels sprouts, and we put them out on a platter. And he didn't even notice. He just we're like waiting, we're like videotaping him. This is how old I am. We're videotaping. We're phone recording, whatever you call it. We're recording, and we're like waiting for him to get one, and we're all sitting there like laughing. And he just, I was like, okay, this has no climax.
It doesn't taste so gross. Have you tried it?
It's like he loves chocolate so much, it didn't matter. He wasn't even tasting what was going in.
Oh, mine would totally know. I mean, he doesn't like chocolate either, so that could be a problem. But
that would be it. No, like, okay, I have to put the chocolate chips in like an old backpack in like a closet in like, or I'll go to make the cookies and nothing will be there, which is super frustrating.
Oh my God.
That's how it is in my home with my 4 children. I count my husband as one of them. 4 boys. It's a whole nother level. I don't even want to know what like happens when we hit teenager years. Like, just be more.
You're gonna be cooking a lot.
I know. I already cook like every meal, which is insane. But what goes in is super important to me. So. Plus I want, if I'm eating something, it has to like taste super good, right?
For sure.
Sorry, I got food dorky. I'll stop now.
No, that was amazing. I mean, now I know if I ever come over to your house and you give me a cookie, I'm going to have to examine what the hell is inside. If there's like broccoli in there, Brussels sprouts.
I haven't tried broccoli yet. I'm sure cooked broccoli, yeah, it's pretty strong flavor. Thing about black beans, I've actually put them in like banana cake and like chocolate chip banana muffins. Can't even tell.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be okay.
Yeah, like it's just so good.
I'm gonna make that for my partner and see what he says if he finds beans. Oh my God. Well, it's the reason why I'm laughing is because he ordered a 50-pound bag of beans during quarantine, and we don't know what to do with them. So I'm gonna go home and make some cookies.
They're like a monster cookie. That's what they taste like.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I have to like the recipe's so willy-nilly. I sent it to my neighbor. She's like, because I eyeball everything.
Yeah.
We turn out. I'll have to send you the recipe. It's actually so good. I know what the title of our podcast is going to be. So you're pretty young, right? Like how old are you now?
I'm like, how old am I? I always forget. I'm 30. I'm going to be 33 this year, so 32.
Oh, okay. We're super close in age.
Yay.
I'm just 1 year older than you. I thought you were like 28.
Thank you. No, I think it's the letting go of the drinking, reviving me slowly.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think like you can like see it in your skin?
I think so.
Yeah, like a little bit of a like. Woo.
I think it's definitely more hydrated since like I remember waking up and my tongue being always really dry, so it can't be good for you.
Yeah, so you're fairly young and you have like accomplished quite a bit. Like did you do 4 years? Do you have your BFA?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's in painting.
Yeah, and then you did some residencies right after?
Not right after. I was really poor for a while, so I was just serving pancakes and stuff for a few years. So I would say it was probably like
I did that too.
Yeah, that's really fun. I still have nightmares about the cooks throwing things at me. I would say it was like 5 years after I graduated, I finally started to like take chances, and yeah, it's when I started overcoming my fear of like selling work and making my own money too. So
yeah, no, I think like I even went over, like, so you started the zine, and like what drive, and you started, and then it just like organically grew. Did you kind of just like, were you always really driven and you knew, or did things just like organically just come together? Because like you have like such a huge platform, and like you do have a lot of people like running things.
Yeah, it was definitely really organic. The beginning was definitely really driven by FOMO because I was not getting any art related jobs. You know, I didn't have galleries. I wasn't selling my art consistently. So I was just feeling so scared that I'm going to waste my art degree and any art experience. So I just like, I really wanted to be a part of the art world. So I was volunteering a lot at that time. And then that's when I started the magazine, just because like I knew I obviously can't volunteer for a living. So, and then all the other interests, you know, they were very organic. You know, as I built the magazine and rebuilt it again, I think it was natural to kind of share everything I've learned through our book and writing articles. It started with like articles on the Create website. Me and Alicia started writing. We enjoyed it. So we wrote the book, you know, and then we started doing podcast episodes along those lines. And then we wrote the full version of the book. And then coaching was like the next step. So it was always just like, what else can I do? Because I also get really bored.
Yeah.
Full transparency. I'm like, I don't want to do, like, I can outsource that. Now that I know how this works, I can support someone else and I can try something else to keep myself entertained too.
Mm-hmm. But like having an idea and being inspired and being excited about something, but also having the follow through.
It's hard. I mean, some ideas are easier than others. I'll tell you now, like, I'm tripping over this book that I'm writing that's not business related, like this fiction book. It's hard to follow through because it has no purpose. Like, I almost find it easier for something like Art Queens because other people are on the other side benefiting from it. And I know it's going to be useful and I know it'll help them. But with something that's just like a passion project, it's so much harder to like sit down and do it because you're kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's weird, you know, and you don't want to think like that as an artist or a creative.
Right? Because you love it. And
Yeah.
you have to feed that part of yourself. And you know what? I think you'll find purpose if you just keep at it, right? Like,
yeah. And also
like
another thing that I'm learning for sure, the other thing that I'm learning too is like, I definitely am a painter and not a writer. Like I love writing stuff, but like, it's not what really fulfills me. Like I get this curiosity once in a while, but it's not a consistent, like if I don't paint for a while, I start getting antsy and like, I need to go paint or I'm going to like, someone's going to get hurt. But with writing, I can just write for a little bit and that voice is silenced for weeks. So it's also good to experiment to see like, you know, is this really an important part of your life or is this like something fun that you do once in a while?
Yeah. And those things are okay. Like,
yeah, exactly. I think it's good to have, not everything has to be
so
like,
many aspects of your life that are for that purpose exactly. So maybe you don't necessarily need that to be, you know, but like at the same time, you're like, I'm putting time into it. So you want, you know, but I totally get that. I feel the need to paint. Definitely, like it's a hunger almost, and you have to feed it. But I almost feel like if you work, I didn't think that way about writing, but it was for a reason. It was because people for my whole life told me I couldn't. I was really bad at it. And I struggled, but it was only for lack of, it was mostly because there was so much negativity surrounding it. I would get made fun of, or like I got to grade 12 and the first time a TA took me aside, so not even a teacher, but a teacher's assistant, because I feel like she cared. She's like, Brandi, has anyone showed you how to write an essay? And this is like grade 12. I'm like, no. Like maybe it was in class because I'm such a visual learner, like I'm an artist. So maybe if someone did throw it somewhere on a board or whatever, I probably missed it, or like someone gave me a handout and I didn't read it, like, you know? And so she like sat me down after class and like took me through it. But still, I went through university and like this one professor was super mean. She's like, you need to take an essay writing course. This is ridiculous. I was like, thanks. I tried super hard. I like the subject, and it wasn't a matter of me not knowing the content or being interested. I was super interested in what I was learning. It was art school. And then in my last semester, I took a history of Hitchcock course. So we got to watch movies the whole time. And I was so interested in everything Hitchcock did. And he did this call for whatever the essays, and I was the only one out of the whole class who picked this one subject, and it was the aesthetics of murder in comparing like Thomas de Quincey, Oscar Wilde, and Edgar Allan Poe. So the research in that was so cool. Like, and I was like, the aesthetics of murder, and I literally am like, this seems cool, but I don't even know what he means. So let me figure it out. But it was a, and he gave me an A+, and I know that it wasn't like really an A+ paper, but he knew I did the work. He knew I put in the time and was into it, right? So he was so kind, and that was like my first blossom. And this is how big how much teachers can impact a person in their life, right?
So
it
powerful.
Blossomed into something. I'm like, I can do this. I can write. And then it's now turned into, I am also writing a book, and I'm super excited, but it was challenging. I agree with you. You're like, what am I doing?
Every time you sit down, I'm like, what is that? Who wrote that?
It's super time consuming, which if any writers are listening, they're probably like, duh, we know. But the more and more I do it, the more it's becoming a creative habit and like an addiction to it. And now I actually, while I'm running or walking or doing something else, I think of something I need to say or put down, and I really love, and you might like trying to write poetry, because it kind of goes along with the like unstructuredness of creating a painting, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I need. Actually, it's funny you say that. I was just sitting by the creek, just kind of letting random thoughts flow out. I'm like, this feels good today.
Yeah.
But also, first of all, I totally agree with you. I think the power of words when it comes to teachers, we're so like unsure of ourselves during that time of our life, and to hear really discouraging things can be really hard. Like, that's what my block with drawing was. I used to draw all the time as a kid, but when in college they said, oh, like, you know, you're not good at this, or you're not as good as this other person. Look at what they're like. I'm like, well, I can only do what I'm doing. Like, like, let me catch up. I've never seen this before. I've never drawn a box that makes up a human body before. So,
or like, help me, right?
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. I'm glad you had a good experience finally. But the other part that I wanted to say is that is the other, like, we started this conversation by talking about getting support and hiring help. And that's something that's been really healing for me too. Like, knowing how much actually goes into, if you work with a traditional publisher, you go through developmental edits, you go through copy edits. So it's not that just you writing, your idea obviously is the most important part, but you're not alone, and you don't have to rely on only your own expertise. Like, there could be a whole team supporting you through this and polishing it with you. And that's something to remember too, because even with our self-published book, we ended up hiring editors and design, you know, it's not all you, it's a whole project. A book or any writing piece, I think, is, so taking that pressure off too, like knowing you can get help with the stuff that you're not as strong, you know, at.
Like if there's a comma in the wrong place, like, yeah, right?
I don't even know where commas go. I'm like comma happy. I'm like commas everywhere.
Comma, dash. I don't even actually know what all those things are called. I'm seriously doing this like out of just like, it literally is a creative thing that I'm like, I need it to come out. I don't know where it came from because of all that negativity, but I think it was just like, it was something that was always there. I just didn't know how to properly. And the more I blog post, the more I write my poetry. I always write poetry now to go along with my artwork, which I find very easy, which poetry isn't an easy thing for a lot of people, but it's like, I can better explain myself through a poem than I can through like trying to write an artist statement. So I'm like, fuck artist statements.
Well, I mean, no one reads them anyway. Who cares?
But like, even in one of our, the Queen's, the don't overthink it thing I did.
Yeah.
The Queen's, and And who came on and said, Brandi, she like almost made me cry.
I was crying that whole day after that. It was so beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it was like, that was the best. It was a hard day, but it was like the best day ever, because leading up to that point, I was so nervous. And you're like, are people gonna like what I have to say? And it was so empowering because it was so well received, and there was so much, I could feel love that day. Like it was, I feel love all the time, but literally, and it's a computer screen and like a chat, but literally, couldn't you feel like love, like pouring out everywhere? It was,
yes, I could.
Actually like insane. So it just gave me so much, it lifted me right up, and I'm like, I can, and I wrote that, right? So like, I can write. And
you can.
You like, I just want to, it shouldn't be so hard. I just want to spread joy and positivity and make others feel the same way.
Yes. And you're already doing it.
I hope so.
When is your book? Where are you at with your book right now?
I'm on page 90, I think.
Yay.
But the part when we talk about like ideas and doing the stuff, I kind of looked into like the publishing world, and I was like, that's super hard, and I like stopped. Ideas, like when was it Juliana who came on, and she's like, I would love a book of your poetry.
Oh like, yes.
So I was like, oh
my God, I would love one too. I think this needs to happen.
Well, then I just have like so many ideas, but in order to figure out how to execute them, that is what like bombards my thoughts and stresses me out, to be honest.
It's all possible. I think just do the stuff, and there's always people who can help you with the details.
Yeah, I think it will just happen the way it happens, and I have to like not try to figure it out today, but just maybe finish it first.
Yeah, right. I'm with you. We will finish our books, and we'll have a part 2 episode on how we did it.
I'm excited that you're writing a fiction book. I think that's so interesting.
It's so hard. It's so hard. It's like even more personal than like writing about yourself. It's so weird. Like really have to dig in and be like embrace like the darkness, and some like in order to channel other characters, unless it's like a really boring book where everything is perfect.
Yeah, no. And like there's a whole nother world, and it's kind of fun to learn about like creating a character and like the structure. My husband also bought me like, right, because when I told him, he was in utter shock, I have to say. I walked into the room and I was like, I figured out the title of my book. And him and his mom were there, and they both looked at me like, what the fuck? Like, and I was like, have I not told you guys that I wanted to write a book? Have I not meant to? And I have so much on the go because I'm at home with my kids, and they were just, it took them a minute. It took them a minute to like, they're like, Brandi, because Brandi, what you're doing already is like a lot. You're gonna, and they probably read my writing. They're like, ugh, or edited it. And for a second, I was kind of mad at them, right? I was like, oh, you guys, I can do this. I super can. Like, I know I can. I thought of the title. I know, and I'll give you a little hint. It's maybe I won't. I'll save it.
Yeah, just save it. Save it. Part 2.
Yeah, so they took like a day to get on board. But he bought me all these writers' books, and they're so fun, and it is like, it's fun to like research like, the past that your character had, or you know what I mean? Like, isn't it?
Yeah, it's even more fun than writing sometimes, just to like see all these I am like reading all these kids books, not kids, but like young adult books now, and it's like, wow, I really miss that. I used to just read all day after school. I was a really fun kid.
I was a little bit, I liked reading too. I remember like when I was 12, like reading stuff that was way beyond, because I was being bullied. So there was a reading nook in our classroom. Oh. It was very sad. And I like built a reading nook on my bunk bed. But that's where I fell in love with reading. So like that was important, right? Do you like Harry Potter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally every episode of my podcast lately, someone mentions Harry Potter, and I'm like, this is amazing. I manifested this. This like literally someone has been asking me about Harry Potter every day. I don't know what the universe is trying to tell me, but I love Harry Potter.
I even got, and I should totally put this in my shop because we're setting up a new collection and I'm having like jewelry and stuff, but I literally got like a lightning bolt necklace.
Oh my God.
And it's so cool because like it can represent so many things, but like, and it's for Harry Potter.
That's so cool.
That's where it started. But like, I have two and I got them made, but yeah, so any jewelers out there, contact me if you're into making like and we're in business.
That's amazing.
I'm sure there's
yeah,
more, but
I need this necklace in my life.
Okay. It seems like it going. I actually do have an old bestie. She made me a lightning bolt like charm link bracelet, gold with but I'm too afraid to wear it because I'm bad with bracelets because I am so all day with my heavy babies and I'm just not careful.
I told you you're gonna love it. It was great. It was so wonderful. And speaking of the chain that because this podcast was way back, I'm just making the video now, if you're listening from YouTube, and we did make the lightning chain necklace, and it's so cool, and it's super great for Harry Potter geeks, for sure. And yeah, that's all. It was great, and oh, I have in this episode I have the bean cookie recipe. I know it sounds gross, but honestly I eat them every day because it just fills my sweet tooth, but also gives me protein, which everyone needs, that nice balance, and especially if you're running around all the time after very busy children and trying to conquer the art world, etc., writing a book, etc. Yeah, I hope everyone is doing well this season, taking care of themselves, and we'll, if you want to be a part of our community too, the Color Me Happy community, it is free to join on Facebook, and you can find that at brandyhofer.ca in our community area, and how you could be featured on the podcast. Just send me a message or an email. I'm happy to hear from you. Chat soon. Bye.